Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Cone Dodger here. Welcome to the third race of the season, or the third week of the season, in F1 2018. Today we are going to head out to China once we wrap up the Bahrain weekend. I think we had a message from Carl saying that things are looking pretty positive around the team, as well as a message from Emma saying that we had completed our team goal, which was to finish 10th or better in the first two races, or one of the first two races. So our contract value is up, our reputation with the team is increasing, we're less rookie than veteran now, and we are more we're more showman than sportsman, which is all things the team want. Also, due to the impressive results at Bahrain, I am going to increase the AI level by 2 to a factor of 87, which, funny enough, is the same AI level that one Gem Knight has settled in on, which is interesting because the two of us seem to always be running together in any racing series or game that we ever do. We're always pretty close to each other, so 87 might be the level for us, but we'll keep tuning that as needed.
I know we were expecting some new developments this weekend, but some of them have failed quality control. Make sure you indicate what you'd like redeveloped via the workstation.
Carl, that disappoints me. What has happened? Alright, let's go to our messages. Carl says, as mentioned before, development is critical. Also need to actively manage the limited supply of gearboxes and power units, blah blah blah. Okay. Emma, could you look at this new goal? The next goal is worse than the first goal. That's interesting. So finish 12th or better in the next two races. Carl's got the weekend, and let's see, the rear downforce passed, the gearbox wear passed, but the weight reduction failed. Okay. And the weather for this weekend, great. Qualifying in the clouds, racing in the rain. Well, starting to become a pattern for us already this season, isn't it? Okay, well, that's interesting. Let's actually look at the... I like that your value sliding across the screen for no reason. Let's look at the R&D tree. We have 1,800 resource points available thanks to a bonus, I believe, for completing the first driver contract thing. The chassis needs a 250 point redevelop time for 1 week. That's not a big deal. Although it does put us back a week, doesn't it? You know, that's one additional week of development we have lost. Aerodynamic-wise, we could either move to the next rear downforce upgrade, or we could do a front downforce upgrade. I think I'm going to try to make it even because the car is behaving pretty well. I'm real happy with the car, and I don't want to upset the balance by offsetting these developments. That makes any sense? I really like this. The failure chance went from 37.5 to 36.5. It's like one of those sales on Amazon where they're like, wait. Before you click off this, I just want to let you know that this is 10 cents cheaper than it was before. Oh, the price is the same too. It is. I didn't even notice that it's actually 10 points cheaper. That's funny. We do have enough points to actually spend on a power upgrade as well. And from there, I'm going to save, I'm going to harvest my resource points here, and not do a durability upgrade this time. I'm going to save those so that next time around, we can afford these more expensive full squares on the Aero and stuff like that. Cool. Alright, happy with this? It's very early, but if we look at the progress, every team took big upgrades at Bahrain there, pretty much. Some more than others. Sauber did not, so they must be waiting for this week, most likely. What's interesting is that the Haas, Renault, McLaren group started very close, and the upgrades that the individual teams took, all it did was make them much closer. So that's going to be interesting to watch for the rest of the season.
Good morning and welcome from Shanghai. The wet conditions here today are likely to prove an especially difficult challenge as the teams begin their preparations for the weekend's Grand Prix.
Okay, well, we're going to start in the rain.
Then. We've fitted some new parts for this session. Hopefully they'll help you squeeze a bit more pace from the car.
Another rain weekend here. Is there an actual weather forecast in this menu or not? I don't think there is. I think that's all been compressed into the messaging system for the weather forecast. At least as far as I can tell. So I don't see anywhere where we can... Oh, there it is, right here. Plus 10 minutes, still rain, so... Oh, this slow
I'd
scrolling
take a
thing
set of
still exists.
intermediates in these unpredictable conditions.
I would agree. It looks like it's going to be pretty consistent with this light rain, which is good. These are the conditions we're most likely to race with. It dries towards the end of the session. So we should get out there and do some practice in these conditions. Okay, so I'm going to go out here and try and do our track acclimatization in the rain, because that's going to give me the best practice for the race, most likely, even if it does hurt our qualifying practice. But it looks like we're going to have some dry sessions as well, so perhaps I can do that qualifying program in the dry and try to make the most of practice. Don't have to worry about DRS. I really don't even have to worry about ERS in this program. Speed isn't necessarily what we're looking for. Oh, trying to hit these boxes is, and I was nearly off there. This never-ending turn 1 complex here is always an interesting challenge. I talked about this at the end of last season, not the beginning, how the season is stacked in my favor towards the beginning of the season, and then kind of against me for the end of the season. I'm surprised that was purple. Where a lot of these tracks that we start with, some of my favorites. Ooh, I'm gonna miss this one. I had jumped way out of the box. I've gotten out of the dry lane. But yeah, like I was saying, like this track, Bahrain, Russia, I'm trying to think of the other ones. Even Austria, Canada. I can't think of them all right now because I'm trying to focus on the rain and the freezes. Those are tracks that I typically go to with excitement and know that I have a good chance of doing well at. And the fact that they're mostly stacked at the beginning of the season, and then some of the ones that I don't tend to do very well at are towards the end, it affects the way that I have to approach the season and how hard that I will push in the beginning of the season versus the end. So I do think it's important that we score good points in good races in the beginning. Of course, we do have some track changes this year. Not a lot, no major changes.
Good work, you seem to have a solid handle on that. Let's try and perfect each
This
turn.
track must be...
Remember that chaining good corners together will give you a consistency bonus.
Alright, Jeff, calm down. This track must be really bumpy. My wheel is shaking like crazy. I'm sure you can hear it. No, I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, it's completely gone. Oh well. Not the first time that's happened, not the last time it'll happen. I know on last week's race, I talked about going through the setup with everybody and showing where I was going in that direction, and then I completely forgot to do that. Even outside of the races, there's still a lot to manage in the game, so it's hard to really nail all that stuff. For here, I don't know, I'm kind of still lost when it comes to the wet weather setups, and it's weird that the freeze happens in the same place right there. And although there's been some videos pointed to me on setup guides, and you know, there's the big celebrity F1 game players that they release their videos saying, this is the right setup. I'm never 100% convinced on that. I do think that there is a setup for every driver, and it's not, despite what some people think, I don't think it's a default setup is the win kind of situation. I think there's some variance between each driver's ideal setup in this game. Oh, so close to it, perfect.
This is the final lap of the program.
So close. I'm going to try it again. Just because I want I'm not going to try it again, I already blew it. But I did want the time in the car in these conditions. I do think the track is actually not that wet, so we might be dealing with more than this in the race. But it's good that I got some time in the car in these conditions. This video is going to be heavily dated. As I've mentioned, I'm having to pre-record these all in one weekend, basically. It's a shame I screwed up that first one. But the Spa Grand Prix just concluded, basically. And it was kind of a snoozer. Oh wow, that's weird. I guess it was too slow. That's really too bad, because that was in like a huge block of purple. So yeah, the Spa Grand Prix ended up being your standard Formula 1 race. Everything went pretty much to plan, other than the first lap, where Hulkenberg caused a rather large collision into Turn 1, which is something that happens a lot at Spa. And at this point, we don't know what's going to come of that. A lot of people were kind of hinting that it might be a one-race ban, because that happened with Grosjean in the past, but the situation was different. And to think or call the FIA consistent in their calls would be ridiculous. So who knows what might happen.
Alright, that's the program complete. This is some decent data, although far from optimal. It could
Far.
still be
You
worth
shut up. It
running
was
again.
15 points. Also, really funny that we got the consistent, like, nod there at the same time that I was saying FIA isn't consistent. Coincidental consistencies. Alright, to this point, things are going fairly okay. The session has dried out. We got 10 minutes left. I'm going to go out and do a qualifying pace. While the track isn't perfect, but it's nearly there. I'm going to run my full wet weather setup, though, to see how it would be for qualifying to do that. Because I would rather be good for the race than good for qualifying. Car feels pretty good. I'm actually just kind of dealing with a little bit of a push as the track dries out. I think the track is probably at the best it's been, and now I'm on the Ultra tires, so I think it's going to be really good for this. Whereas it wasn't exactly perfect for the last couple sessions I was doing. Got it in turn 1. I can really see how far down we are on time on the straightaways, and the straightaways are pretty damn important here. But this track's a good mix. There's a lot of different elements here that you can kind of bypass a deficit on one end of the track by really boosting another. And this car is doing really well at the high-speed turns, and is pretty darn good in low-speed turns as well, so seems like it's kind of okay that we're currently losing time on the straightaways. I do really like this track. I don't think I really liked it at first. It took a while to come around for me. The more I've run it, the more I've really learned to like it. I'm actually starting to predict that it's going to hang up right there. A little bit wide. But a decent run to the straightaway. Might be one of our best qualifying program performances so far. I think I can get a lot more in the braking zone there. As you can see, it'll pay huge dividends on the exit. It'll really lay down the power. Yeah. So even though I'm a little slow in,
Program complete and a job well done.
it's real good
We got
out.
some excellent data with our run, so come on back to the garage and I can talk you through the numbers.
Wow, Optimal is result 7th, so they must think that our team is a little bit down on pace here. That's the impression that I'm getting. We got an optimal result, aiming for 7th, and they really didn't think we would be in the points for the next 2 races. So there must be something that they see with our car and the gap between us and the front 3 teams.
Shanghai 16th in the speed trap, 323.3 kilometers per hour.
Well, that's exactly in line with what I was just talking about. Now we're definitely not running a low downforce setup.
An interesting practice session there then. Let's remind ourselves of the top three, who are Vettel, Red, and Max Verstappen. Practice times are on the board then, but no points are on offer just yet. We'll be back with more F1 action soon.
K-Mag put in a pretty good lap for softs. I think just me and Vettel did qualifying runs, and maybe Leclerc, sorry, Leclerc. I've got to learn names, and you know how terrible I am with pronunciation. Well, with me and Vettel doing qualifying runs, we were really not that far apart, which is interesting since they pinned us for 7th. Not too sure about that. So I'm out here today doing, I say today because it's the next practice session, doing the race program, the race strategy program, which is mostly irrelevant since we know it's going to be a wet race and the rest of practice is going to be dry, but gotta do it for the resource points anyway. And I was just thinking about the Hulkenberg incident some more at Spa and how, you know, pretty instantly the penalty talk started. Wow, that helicopter just did a big turn. And I got to thinking about how different that is versus what I remember, you know, growing up racing, where say a driver locked up the brakes and hit another driver, typically was handled in a way where the drivers dealt with it themselves, and the sanctioning body didn't really get involved with stuff like that.
Great lap. You've nailed what we asked for.
Thanks,
Keep it up.
Versus today, you know, when something like that happens, and even though Hulkenberg admitted, you know, he was late to the brakes and it was his fault, you know, there will be a penalty for that, whether it'll be a 5-place grid penalty, whether it's a race exclusion, who knows. Well, you know now, because, and I know now, but past Cone does not know. We will know that there will be some kind of penalty handed down for that.
Expect to see some rain about 10 to 15 minutes from now.
Well, I should have waited then. But it's interesting because I also watched the Road America NASCAR Xfinity race yesterday, and it was a friggin' disaster. Like, there was drivers locking up the brakes and hitting other cars, you know, every few laps. Now that's a very different situation. It's a, you know, it's a feeder series. It's a different discipline than most of the drivers are used to. There's, you know, one-race drivers in there, and it's NASCAR. So it's a totally different world. But I'm curious to see, and it's already happened a little bit, curious to see if NASCAR tends to move towards the Formula One approach, where when something like that happens, a driver causes an accident unintentionally, if NASCAR will start to hand penalties down, or if that will never happen.
Okay, super job so far. We're getting great data. Stay focused.
I am going to cruise in for a lap and then try a pit stop and see what pit lane is like here. Finish out our conversation there. You know, it's an interesting dynamic. It's one of the few things that wall is glitching out. That wall is totally glitching out. It's Z-fighting. Good game. It's one of the few things that I can say is just a huge, major, like, I want to say cultural, but, you know, basically it's a complete change between NASCAR and F1. It's one of the few things that's still that way. And maybe it seems extremely antiquated in the way that NASCAR handles things, but I really don't know how I feel about, you know, the sanctioning bodies being in charge of all that stuff. To some degree, I don't know, it just feels like drivers in general respect each other a lot less on track than they used to. So maybe it's necessary to have, you know, the hand smack down and say, nope, you can't do that. You can't just spin somebody out because you missed the turn. But the other half of me is like, well, if the drivers, you know, can't push the car to the limits and occasionally make mistakes, then are they really pushing the car to the limits ever? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about all that. Alright, Zap Penetrate, it's not too bad. But it's interesting to watch it develop, and it's interesting to see the two different sides of people's opinions there. Obviously, the Formula One and the NASCAR opinion are, in many cases, two completely different audiences and groups of people. Very different preferences, but there's crossover here and there. So the only time the NASCAR ever really steps in is if a driver intentionally wrecks somebody. And even that, they've just kind of barely started to get into, which leads me to believe that eventually they'll probably get into the just plain causing an accident side of it too. Probably. Maybe. I don't know. What's your opinion on that? And also, that's probably the end of practice.
5 minutes until rainfall expected. 5 minutes until rain.
No, I think I got enough time in the rain.
The fans
here we
really
go.
seem to enjoy that. You made it look easy.
What did I make look easy? Practice?
You really went all out in practice today. Are you testing new components?
I really invest in the aero package. Yeah, I'm gonna do that because I want the aero department to be happy.
It's the start of the season. How do you think things are going to go for you?
Great team like this, I can't fail. I'm either at the best team, so things are gonna go great. Never tell this early. That's the showmanship answer. It's not the answer I like.
Appreciate your time.
Okay. Those are still really weird, and I don't like that system. I like the bonuses. I like that aspect of it. I just don't like the actual interview process. Let's check our messages before qualifying. Emma, good luck out there today. That's a waste. And the weather update hasn't changed. And just Shanghai. Okay.
We'd like to welcome you from wherever in the world you join us today for this F1 qualifying session here in Shanghai, China.
Well, great job. Now this video is going to be super dated when somebody in the future is watching this from Mars. Great. Just great. Let's see. Do I want to do anything? I could try to take a little front wing off of it since it's dry, but I think I'm going to keep it like it is since I was already dealing with understeer anyway. So let's lock into park for May. Let's go do our flying laps. He doesn't say it anymore, but I do think we'll have no problem getting through T1 today. Car is showing immensely good pace. However, from what I've seen, it seems like the AI sandbag a little bit more and really have a lot more pace to show once we get to qualifying than they showed in practice. We'll see if that holds true today. Got the wing? I did not. I saw his hand move, but apparently I didn't hit it. That's a tricky entry to turn 1 because DRS is technically open until you hit the brakes, and sometimes I don't hit the brakes until I'm pretty well into the turn. Down the power a little too early there. But because of the relatively high downforce setup I'm using, the thing is hooked up. Pretty happy with it. Ooh, the bumps through here are way worse than they were last season. I definitely remember that not being so bad. It's interesting because I ran a compressed season in the last season of 2017 there. Everything's a lot more fresh in my mind because I was doing 2 races a week instead of 1 race. 1 race a week. As my brain struggles to spit words out. Oh, there's the understeer. But yeah, now that I'm starting this season a little compressed and ended that last career compressed, I think it's good. I think it's really good to keep everything really fresh in the brain. The only time I'm really going to be in trouble is when I make my return to actual sim racing, because I'm so dialed in and tuned into Codemasters physics. Alright, faster than Magnussen by a healthy margin. I think this is just a good try for me though. I really do think this is I would say one of my top 5. I like driving it, and I'm usually pretty good at it. So I have high hopes and good expectations for myself this weekend.
We've only got 2 laps of fuel left.
But they are going
Dropped to
fast.
P2.
Ricardo did just beat us by almost 2 seconds, so we're not ridiculously up the grid. An interesting session there, then. The announcers didn't want to talk about it, but it is interesting because a lot of shakeups in the field here. We got Ricardo up there in 2nd, really close to Hamilton, and yet Verstappen down there in 11th, who ran softs. He ran the hardest compound in Q1. Very bizarre, very bizarre. So, although we are P5, it's probably not super representative of where we'll be. I mean, pretty much the norm in the bottom 5. Alright, let's go to Q... Can I start that over? Let's head to Q2. Hey, good job, Cone. Weather still looks good for Q2 here. Let's try to just repeat that Q1 lap. Really, I'm not looking for anything spectacular or spectacularly different. I don't know why they're trying to waste our battery life here on the warm-up lap. I guess it is one more thing to remember, but I can really do the changeover somewhere like here, because we're off the throttle anyway. Okay, definitely got DRS that time. And it should shave probably a 10th or 2, just in our front straightaway speed. Apparently I had too much front straightaway speed because it washed wide on me there. I had also tried to touch the brake a bit on corner entry to get that flap to shut. Shut your flap. I don't know if that helped or not. It might have actually upset the car. Boy, you can really hear that wheel bouncing around, can't you? It is very aggressive. Much different than I remember last season. I don't know if they just saw that the track got bumpier or if the bumps are just more defined in this game. Ooh, that was pretty good. That was pretty and good. Just the nose, the front tires on turn-in just feel so much better. Really loving the way the car drives. Makes me a little worried about focusing only on aero upgrades. I might need to focus more on power upgrades to try and catch that front part faster, because the balance is very good for these tracks anyway. It could change as the season goes on. Okay, just a little wide on the last turn. That was still a smoking lap.
That's P2. You're currently in 2nd place.
No complaints out of me from that. Even with that little error in turn 1 and a little wide on the last turn, I think it still worked out just fine. It's one of the reasons I like this track, is there's just a lot of options. There's different lines you can take. It's not common of the tailgate runs. Things have really closed in at the top there. 34.1 to a 34.7 for us. Hamilton down there at 35.9 is probably going to jump up. Magnussen's hanging in the top 10 with a 36.1. Really need to see more out of him there. Bottas hasn't jumped up yet. I think there's going to be a shake-up to the end. I think I saw that, yeah, Magnussen did make it, though. Very good. It really does seem like the Mercedes are a little slower than expected, and the Red Bulls maybe a little faster than expected. And, I might be outperforming a bit. To be honest. I might be a little further up the grid than I should be. Might inch up that difficulty once again, but it could just be a combination of pretty good handling car and pretty happy with this track too. The cloud cover has returned for Q3 here. It's getting later in the day, but I'm going to go for an all-out flyer. Really doing my best to keep the amount of laps I do with the car to a minimum. I don't want to run into reliability issues further down the season. That's really annoying when you have to take penalties. So I'd like to avoid that if possible. Rolled into turn one a little different. You see it washes out there, but that's actually almost helpful because it helps to get the car rotated. Oh, it snapped out of that turn beautifully. When you can get onto the power and it actually helps the car turn out, it's a beautiful feeling. You gotta really fight it through there over the bumps. Fight it to the inside there. Chased it wide, but it stayed in the throttle fine. I feel like at a track like this, the ability to look into the turns and the apexes is actually helping me more than I would expect. Yes. It's been a pretty darn good lap. Could we be looking at an upset pole here? It's not impossible, because it's been an absolute flyer. Oh, just a little bit oversteer on the exit there. 34.4. We're on top right now. We'll see if it holds. Really, the only moment was that little bobble on the exit and that little slide right here that I don't think caught me very much out. Whew. It's a fun track, it's a good track, but it's an intense track. It really gets the heart racing, I tell you. And the rest of your body too. Boy, before I even got to the standings, someone knocked us off. It was Hamilton. Always the killjoy in qualifying,
so far,
isn't he?
Our fastest lap is a 1 minute 34.4.
Well, we'll play this out and see where we end up.
The grid is all set then for the race tomorrow. But before we go, let's quickly remind ourselves of our top three, who are Hamilton, Red, and Max Verstappen. Goodbye for now then, but we're really just getting started. Make sure to join us again for Lights Out tomorrow.
Indeed. Okay, so P2 is a little high up the grid for our team where it is right now. I don't know what happened with Ferrari in that last session. They both turned times much faster than that all day long and then really dropped the ball here. The Red Bulls look really fast here, and the Mercedes are a big split. Everything's messed up right now. Everything is weird, and I don't know why, and me being in this whole weird battle up front is equally weird. Let's see, is there any post-qualifying interview? Probably not, since we had a practice interview. I think we'll be looking at probably going up to a little bit higher of a difficulty. Most likely. I'm not going to super penalize myself, I mean, for just having a good race, but we'll see. If the race doesn't go our way and it's really tough and we fall back through the grid, to be honest, as we should, we'll see. But if we were able to really hold a podium here easily, then we'll have that conversation. And, oh, I keep skipping that. I forget that it doesn't show you the points anymore, which is a shame.
All right, I think we can call that a successful qualifying. We should be in with a good chance in the race.
I would agree, Jeff. I would agree. Any messages to end out qualifying? Nope. All right, well, that's it. Hope you're ready for a wet and interesting race tomorrow in China, where hopefully we can battle for a podium, but it's all going to depend on strategy, I think. I need to do better with the wet weather strategy, and it looks like it's going to be a consistent, light rain race. So it basically should play out like a one-stop and simple strategy race, but we'll see. We'll see. Thank you as always for watching. I will see you next time.